Thank you. So let's see if this works. Today I would like to talk about the future of urban mobility. So this year we have completed and opened the Danish pavilion for the World Expo in Shanghai. In this pavilion we wanted to kind of reintroduce to China the idea of the bicycle as an urban form of sustainable transport. So basically what we did was we designed the entire pavilion as one kind of continuous loop containing the exhibition and a bicycle parking with rentable bikes on the top. So with this project we hope to kind of put focus on new forms of urban mobility, and that in a country that used to have a really strong bicycle culture, but that has now been replaced by a massive car culture that's almost banning the bicycles from the centers of the cities in China. So today the cars represent some of the biggest problems that urbanism is facing today, like massive traffic congestion, pollution, and so the project I would really like to talk about today is about cars and how cars might be the key to creating a future sustainable city. So these two guys on the picture are the Voisin brothers. In the last century, they were famous car manufacturers and airplane manufacturers in France. And they commissioned the famous architect Le Corbusier to come up with a future vision for a city based on this new form of transport, the personal automobile. And Corbusier he came up with this famous plan Voisin, featuring these cloverleaf highway intersections and elevated highways seen for the first time. So this spring, we were contacted by a different car manufacturer who asked us basically to look at the future of the city and try to solve all the problems that the car has created since then. And basically, we try to look at this logo of the car manufacturer and try to figure out what could be the future role of the car in a kind of a future scenario of mobility. This logo is originally composed by 4 different car manufacturers. But if you look at the slogan of the company, it's actually all about technology rather than cars. So we thought in the future, we like bicycles in Copenhagen. Would we have to revert to bicycles or public transport in order to create the sustainable city? Or could we imagine that there will happen major technological breakthroughs that would radically change the way that the car could interact with our cities? So in order to try to predict what could be the future for the automobile, we turned to the famous futurist and inventor Ray Kurzweil. He describes how technological progress doesn't only happen constantly, it also happens faster and faster. For example, the Moore's law describes how the speed of microprocessors double every 18 months, in that way creating an exponential growth curve of computational power. And in fact, he argues that all the way since the creation of the universe, every step towards human civilization has been happening faster than the previous step, and we're basically rapidly approaching this, what he calls the singularity, an explosion of artificial intelligence that will continue throughout the universe. And we're quite fascinated by this idea that future changes in technology might happen much faster than we think and much faster than we could predict. So we tried to make our own Ray Kurzweil curve, describing the evolution of the car. Starting all the way back 11,500 years ago, the wheel was invented. And from that point, it took 6,000 years before somebody figured out how to use it in a cart to transport goods. And from there, a series of rapid steps led to the invention in the last century of the automobile. Then in the last decade, we've seen already the first quick steps towards automated driving technologies. Like we've seen, like the introduction of GPS, like radars and sensors in cars. And we believe that this might be the first step towards the next big paradigm change in personal mobility, which could be the true automobile or the 100% driverless car. So could we imagine like that the next big revolution in urban space wouldn't be caused by like flying cars or like high-speed engines, but actually caused by like the full merger of information technology with personal transport? So a couple of examples. In '96, this NavLab project managed to drive all the way across the United States using this laptop computer. And University of California managed to control like these 8 sedans running along the highway, guided by magnets in the roads, completely driverless. And just last month, Google revealed that they have been driving around our streets with driverless cars guided by only a GPS system, a couple of sensors, and a desktop PC. So Google CEO Eric Schmidt, he told recently at a conference that he thought it was a bug that the car was invented before the computer, and then in fact humans shouldn't even be allowed to drive cars because they're so bad at it. So even if like pure driverless cars, if they only exist in the prototypes today, we have a lot of examples of driverless technologies that is already fully functioning in our society. Like driverless trains exist in Copenhagen, and we all know that a plane can fly completely without a pilot. And if you look at the current lineup of like luxury cars from all the car manufacturers, they all feature driverless technologies like pre-crash detection and like a sensor automated parking system and so on. So could we imagine that the driverless car could be the key to solving the environmental problems that the car is causing to our cities today? Well, environmental problems caused by traffic is not a new thing, actually. In the beginning of the last century, the bigger cities were facing like this major pollution crisis caused by horses. In London at this point, there was 50,000 horses driving buses and taxis around the city. In New York, 15,000 dead horses had to be removed from the streets every single year. And if you think about the fact that a horse produces 11 kilos of manure every day, you could imagine that the cities were literally drowning in pollution, and it threatened the very existence of the city as an organizational form. And ironically enough, the solution to this unsolvable problem came with the invention of the automobile. So in that way, like different paradigms of infrastructure and different paradigms of mobility, they replace each other, and they leave kind of different patterns and geometries in our cities. We have the city of the foot traffic, which is the typical medieval center. The city of horse traffic, which is the well-known grid city. And then today we're living in the city of cars. As you can see, the cars take up a lot of space. In fact, if you compare a single crossing between 2 highways with the entire center of Copenhagen, they're the same size. So this car-based infrastructure, it requires all these complicated and multi-layered kind of nuts that create barriers throughout our city. Could we find a smarter way to utilize all this asphalt and all this space? So in this project, we try to explore how the driverless, the pollutionless, and the noiseless car could gradually transform our city to a more safe, like a cleaner and a more enjoyable space to live in. Like one thing is that driverless cars, they take up a lot less space because they can drive closer. We can actually liberate up to 10% of our built substance for new uses by going driverless cars. Also, the typical street crossing today is a bottleneck because cars are limited to certain directions, certain lanes. In a driverless car scenario, you could imagine a much more fluent traffic system because the cars are not tied to specific directions or specific lanes. So ultimately, cars could be moving like schools of fish through the city in this kind of fluent patterns. And we could imagine loosening it up like these rigid circulation patterns of our city and turning it into this kind of much more blended mode of traffic, almost like a public square with different modes of traffic blending together. So one of the major challenges with the driverless cars is that they need a guiding infrastructure. So basically, smarter cars need a smarter city. So today it's been very common to ban cars from city centers and creating these pedestrian zones. So we could imagine instead of a carless zone, we would have a driverless zone in the city centers. So basically, when you enter the driverless zone, you would start the cars would start moving in coordinated patterns with the fellow commuters. In that sense, you could combine individual mobility outside the city with collective mobility inside the city. And we basically imagine to incorporate in the urban surface itself like this network of guiding sensors, like a smart tile that could not only guide all the driverless cars through the city, but also provide energy via solar power, provide lighting to the city, and eventually be able to recharge the city via induction energy. So while researching on this idea, we stumbled upon this product called the Solar Roadway. This firm have actually developed a prototype of a tile that combines LEDs with solar power incorporated in this tile that could replace asphalt. So the idea is that with this product, you could gradually replace this kind of vast amount of asphalt throughout our cities and turn it into this renewable energy source with the solar power. At the same time, it could lighten up the city with information and signage guiding pedestrians and cars. And they have calculated that if you would replace all the asphalt in the United States with this tile, you could provide 4 times the energy need of the entire country. So not only the cars require guiding systems in the driverless city, also pedestrians and bikes would need it. And today, the signage happens with the paint on the asphalt. We could imagine with this smart tile, we could breathe life into the urban surface and turn it into almost like the next generation of the traffic light. So, for example, in the future, the cars could have these shadows in front of them, like a future shadow predicting where the car will go before it goes. Which would be very nice as a pedestrian to see in a driverless car scenario. Also, pedestrians could have these digital halos around them that allows the car to maneuver without hitting anyone. And the urban surface could integrate like traditional greenery and trees. So this site on the picture is Potsdamer Platz in Berlin. This is the first site that a traffic light was installed in Europe in last century. And we have basically made a project turning this entire urban space into a pilot project for a driverless car zone, this new type of urban space that we could imagine will happen in the near future. So when entering this zone in a car, like the driverless systems would take over, and you would start maneuvering in these kind of collective and coordinated patterns with your fellow commuters, and the entire surface of the city would turn into this multicolored, constantly changing graphic surface that's basically orchestrating like this perfect mess of pedestrians, bicycles, and cars moving on top. So in this driverless space, you could imagine coming with your car, like leaving your car. The car would go by itself, finding a parking spot. You would do your stuff, and when you come back, the car could pick you up again. So this type of urban surface could, like multiple times during a day, change function according to the flows and activities happening on top of it. either accommodating super efficient flows of cars in the rush hour, or gradually transforming into a space for cultural events, sports, markets, or recreation. So basically, the idea of infusing the city with the light, energy, and information could enable the urban space to adapt in real time to the changes in life that happens in the city. And you can picture this urban space in the future where all the houses are unchanged, but the entire landscape of asphalt, like the roads, the curbs, sidewalks, fences, and signs are replaced by this elastic type of urban digital surface that's constantly adapting to the life that happens between the buildings. And at the same time, it would be empowering the city with the renewable energy via the solar panels. And so we presented this idea at the Venice Biennale of Architecture this year. And in order to show the idea, we kind of infused our architectural model with light and energy by basically building it on top of a 50-inch flat screen TV. And this last movie I'm going to show is a couple of shots from this one. Thank you.